the Jewish community be targeted. We've seen our Arab community and others, our Muslims. And when we think about the kind of place that San Francisco has been, a compassionate, welcoming city that prides itself on our diversity, we have no choice but to make sure that when something happens to anyone in this city, because of who they are, because of what language they speak, or because of who they love, we have to make sure that people understand that we will not tolerate it. And when a crime is committed and those lines are crossed, we will do everything we can to make those arrests, to hold perpetrators accountable. And although a number of communities have been impacted with hate crimes in San Francisco, none more than the AAPI community. In fact, in 2021, a number of 8 reported hate crimes towards members of the AAPI community. In 2020, am I getting my dates mixed up? It's 2022. So 2020 was 8, 2021, 9. And this year, okay, well, this is 22. We're 23 now? I'm getting confused. I feel like I'm having a senior moment right now. But the fact is, we've seen hate crimes, and Chief Scott will talk more specifically about the dates so you can have the correct data. But we've seen the number last year go up to 60. That's a 567% increase in the number of hate crimes towards people in the AAPI community. Now think about it. That's only the people who are actually reporting the crimes. I know that there are a number of people who are not reporting those crimes. And today, as we talk about the statistics and the challenges that are happening, we want to make sure people feel safe. We want to make sure they feel comfortable with reporting. We are aggressively in the process of doing recruitment with the police department. We're doing everything we can, as the department has a number of people who are absent because of COVID, to fill those officers with overtime so that we can make sure these communities are protected like we promised. Annie Chung and the work that she does with self-help for the elderly is continuing the senior escort program so that seniors have someone that they can trust, that can take them on runs for their errands so that they feel safe. Sarah Wan with Community Youth Center, they've been doing incredible work collaborating with the Street Violence and Prevention Program, members of our AAPI community, members of the African American community, working together to patrol neighborhoods, to keep people safe. We've made an unprecedented investment in this community because of the significance of what is happening to this community as it relates to hate crimes more than any other community in this city. So when something happens to one of us, we have to be about the business of protecting them and protecting all of us. How it impacts not just the reputation of our city, but how people feel in this city, the people who live and work here and walk down the streets. When I was growing up in some of the most challenging of circumstances in San Francisco, it would have broken my heart to have my grandmother be attacked in the way that we see so many of our seniors in the AAPI community being attacked. But that did not happen because as a community, we protected one another. And that's what we have to do now more than ever. We know what the data says, and it is time to change it. It is time to change it with the number of investments we make in nonprofit agencies that help support our seniors in this community. And it is time to change it with the number of investments that we must make in the police department, in our ambassadors programs, in other things that will continue to make sure that in this year, 2022, that those numbers decline just as significantly as they rose. And with that, I want to introduce Dr. Grant, I forget which press conference I'm in, our police chief, Bill Scott, to talk more about the data and what's been going on with the police department. And I want to commend them for the number of arrests that they have made in many of these cases to try and hold the perpetrators of these violent attacks accountable. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, and good morning, everybody. First of all, I want to say thanks again to Mayor Breed for her leadership. 2020 and 2021 have both been incredibly challenging years. And I'm going to get into the statistics in a second, but I just want to say, let's start out 2022, number one, with hope, and number two, let's take our city back. This is our year to do just that. So let me start by greeting everybody, Gang Hei Fa Choi. And as I stand here, and Annie and I were just reminiscing when I first came to San Francisco as the chief of police over 5 years ago now. And I finally remember my first Lunar New Year celebration with you all back in 2017. And it's an honor to be doing this for the 6th time as we ring in and celebrate the Year of the Tiger. As the mayor said, 2021 was quite a challenging year in terms of AAPI, Asian American and Pacific Islander hate crimes. And today, we have released our preliminary hate crime statistics for the year 2021. I'm going to highlight a few things for you that are very disturbing and very concerning, and things that we have to turn around. We, the San Francisco Police Department, we, the people of San Francisco, we as a community, we have to turn that around. And it may not come as a surprise to many of you that we saw more hate crimes against our AAPI communities in San Francisco here last year, significantly more than we did the year before. And, you know, we started seeing a turnaround in 2020 when we first got into the global pandemic and things were really, really bad. But in 2021, it became worse in terms of our statistics and how they increased, as the mayor said, about 500%. We saw more than a 6-fold increase in Asian hate crimes in our city, in San Francisco. And we had 8 in 2019, we had 9 in 2020, and we had 60 in 2021. That is significant, that is concerning, and that is alarming. I want to highlight a couple of things that we have done, we, the police department, and we have done these things with the help of many members in our community, including many of our community leaders that are standing here with me today, and I'll introduce them in a second. But more than 30 of the 60 incidents were committed by the same offender, an individual we arrested last August for a series of burglaries and acts of vandalism in which this person deliberately targeted Asian victims. 31 of the 60 crimes by one person. After a successful investigation by our Terraville neighborhood team, also known as TNT, we arrested this individual in August, and he was charged with burglary, vandalism, multiple counts, 31 counts, and they all included hate crime enhancements. In addition to that, our investigators and members of the San Francisco Police Department fought to bring others to justice too, and I'm going to rattle off a few of these. In March, we investigated and charged a Tenderloin suspect for multiple burglaries and criminal threats with 3 hate crime enhancements. This person too was targeting Asian victims. When the person was arrested, he was already on probation for a 2018 vandalism crime in which he yelled racial epithets in that particular crime. In May, our Tenderloin officers moved quickly to search for a brutally violent criminal who stabbed 2 Asian seniors at a bus stop on Market Street. That case got a lot of publicity, was a bad look for our city, and the good news is that our officers located him, made the arrest, and hate crime enhancements were added to those charges as well. In September, an investigation by a robbery detail linked an individual to a series of robberies in the Bayview and Ingleside districts. all targeting Asian females. We made that arrest and charged 7 different counts, and they all included hate crime enhancements. I bring those to your attention, and just to highlight what the mayor said a minute ago, the members of this department are out there to work with the community, for the community, to bring these people to justice. And if anybody thinks that San Francisco is an easy place to come in and terrorize our Asian communities, you're sadly mistaken. And you will be held accountable, you will be arrested, and you will be charged. Please know that this department works tirelessly to bring those to justice who hurt, particularly our elderly Asian community. We want to keep our most vulnerable people safe in our community, and we're committed to holding people accountable when they commit these types of heinous acts. But to do that, we truly need everybody's help. That's why in June we expanded our SFPD hate crime tip line to 9 languages. Our police commissioner, or one of our police commissioners, Larry Yee, and Chair Dennis Wu and other community leaders were instrumental in this effort. Witnesses today have come forward, and they're urged to call 911 whenever they either witness or become victim to these types of acts. And even in the non-emergency situations where the facts don't necessarily amount to a crime, we still need you to call in and report it. And the reason being, it may help a future case if the individual who's committing those types of acts later commits a hate crime. That may help the case. So we still need you to call. You can call the Multilingual tip line at 415-558-5588. You can press 1 for Cantonese, 2 for Mandarin, 3 for Spanish, 4 for Tagalog, 5 for Russian, 6 for Vietnamese, 7 for Korean, 8 for Japanese, and 9 for Thai. Lastly, I want to talk about what we are doing moving forward, and some of what the mayor spoke about earlier, some of our initiatives in 2020, 2021, we believe are paying off. More community engagement, better response, better ability to communicate when you are a victim of a crime, but more importantly, some of the people standing behind me, Sarah Wong, Annie Chong, and many others, have really reached out to support the Asian community during these difficult times. Today we're going to unveil our Stop Asian Hate poster that will be at every SFPD station across the city. We're going to start it out in our central district, Chinatown, and there are many community members that partnered with the design of this poster. And I want to thank Commissioner Larry Yee again. I want to thank Sarah Wan again. I want to thank many others who gave their input and feedback, because we want the message to be loud and clear to everyone that we won't tolerate it. We're going to do something about it if it does happen, and we're going to do everything we can to prevent it from happening, and we're going to do it as a community. So as I close, and before I introduce the next speaker, I want to give you some tips for safety for the Lunar New Year. First, please be aware when strangers ask for money or jewelry. We've seen people taken advantage of just because they're nice people. And strangers come up and talk to them and try to befriend them, and next thing you know, they're being robbed for their money or their jewelry. Do not follow strangers anywhere. A lot of the scams that we see, particularly against our elderly, are people who take advantage of the good-hearted nature of many people in our city. If you don't know the person, don't follow them, don't go with them, don't give them your money, don't do anything that's going to help them victimize you. Don't bring strangers into your home. Do not bring a stranger with you when you are withdrawing money or taking out valuables either from your bank or wherever it is that you secure those values. Anytime you withdraw large sums of money or valuable, discuss it with your family first and make a plan so they know where you are, know where you're going. And it's always good to have somebody with you. Get your yellow whistles. Our community members distributed yellow whistles throughout the year, And when you bring attention to a situation as it's occurring, or if you believe it's occurring, people look, they listen, they pay attention, and that's how we get information that we need to solve crime when people victimize others. So blow the whistle. Bring attention to the situation, but if you do that, please do it safely and be prudent about your own safety. And now, with that, I'd like to introduce Sarah Wan to speak next. But before Sarah comes up to the mic, I want to say a little bit about the Community Youth Center and all the work that Sarah does. Part of our outreach through our community engagement and our community liaison unit, we try to outreach to victims when they are victims of crime to make sure they have the support that they need. And we do what we can as a police department to support them, but many of our community groups, particularly CYC, the Community Youth Center, really does an amazing and outstanding job with supporting people who are victims of crime. And through Sarah's leadership and others at CYC, we have provided that safety net for our victims and their families, so when they do suffer these heinous crimes, they have support. And I can't emphasize enough how important that is to work as a community, support people who are victims to that crime. So I want to thank Sarah and CYC for their work, and now introduce you to Ms. Sarah Wan. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mayor. I remember last year around March when we were in the middle of the search of the anti-Asian hate crime. We received a call and asked that how can we really work together. And with the great support, especially from Ivy and also James, we immediately started to extend the street violence intervention program into a multicultural team, including especially our Asian Pacific Islander representative. And we were actually literally building the plane while it's flying. And as of today, we're really glad that we were able to develop a multilingual, multi-language, and multicultural team that including members could speak Cantonese, Mandarin, Vietnamese, Tagalog, Thai, and Cambodian, and reach out to all the high Asian concentration neighborhoods in San Francisco. On a weekly basis, we stop by the whole Chinatown, Tenderloin area, San Bruno Avenue, Leland Avenue, Clement Street, and also in other areas in San Francisco, including Sunset and Excelsior. And we were able to do it because of really the collaboration with different community partners and also the city departments, especially including the San Francisco Police Department, as well as also the District Attorney's Office, the Victim Support Unit. From last year, since March, we have served a total of 70 victims so far who are victims of crime. A lot of them were being a victim of burglary, of assault, unprovoked assault, also as well as armed robbery and all the other type of crimes. And many of these victims, they are monolingual and really do not know how to seek help. We're very fortunate and this great partnership with San Francisco Police Department's Community Liaison Unit. We were able to reach out most of the victims within 24 to 48 hours to provide them support. And we were very lucky to also have strong community partner like Self Help for the Elderly with Annie. I remember one of the cases with the elder that being discharged from the hospital after a very violent attack. We do not know what to do, how to support the elders when she's returning home without any care. So with any support, we were immediately able to identify a caregiver that can provide in-home services to this elder during this recovery phase. And we would not be able to do it without the support from the community, from the city department to make that happen. So from here, I really want to thank them. But think about it. Last year, we served 60 victims. Since January, we already served 10 victims. So there's still a lot more work to be done. And even though we're seeing this crimes not coming down, I definitely see the change. There are more people willing to make report. The San Francisco Police Department has made it a lot easier with the tip line so that people can report. We're also starting with receiving referrals directly from San Francisco residents or the constituents we serve when they see something happen or when they know there's a victim that needs support. So we get called directly from our community members as well as our community partners. So I definitely see lights. And as the new year comes, the year of the tiger, I really hope that it will bring peace, joy, and also hope to our community. And I would just want to say a few words in Chinese because it's a Chinese New Year. So 我好希望呢度祝願喺三藩市，尤其是我哋嘅華埠或者其他嘅華埠嘅鄰舍啦，我哋今年可以更加繁榮啦，亦都希望有一個好安全同埋和平嘅社區。希望大家樣嘢都心想事成，萬事勝意。Thank you. Oh, and before I finish, I would like to introduce my very great partner, co-chair API Council, also the executive director of APILO, Asian Pacific Pacific Islander Legal Outreach Services Executive Director, Dean Ito.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Mayor Breed. Thank you, Chief Scott. You know, we often like to remind the mayor, and she doesn't really need reminding, that she represents the heart of Asian America. There are very few communities, if none at all. The city is fortunate to have a little Saigon, a Soma Filipinas, vibrant Korean, Southeast Asian, South Asian, Pacific Islander communities, the oldest Japantown and the largest Chinatown in the country. And we have to take responsibility for preventing the hate and the anti-Asian violence that we've been continuing to see. Now, we've had a little lull. There haven't been a lot of headlines until we had that tragic incident in New York, but we want to be vigilant to prevent that type of violence from continuing, especially in the Bay Area, which is so essential to the API community. We really want to appreciate the mayor's efforts to provide emergency funding to address the surge in violence over the past couple of years, and we really appreciate the continuing efforts on the part of the mayor and the city, the police department, to address these incidents on a daily basis. Now, you may not see the headlines with incidents of violence or victims, but Sarah, Annie, and I see these incidents every day. When we're out in the community, I go to banks, and the tellers tell me about the hostility from customers still blaming them for COVID. We go to restaurants where just to take out, you have to go through a locked door because the restaurant workers are afraid to keep their restaurants open for fear of violence. The customers are afraid to come to our cultural corridors because they're afraid of violence. Not that they're necessarily anti-Asian, but they don't want to be seen or alone doing as a customer in a Chinatown or a Japantown because of that fear. So this is impacting us across the board, all segments of our community. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the efforts of Japantown and the Western Addition and the Tenderloin. With the mayor's help, you know, emergency services have been formed and implemented to address the multiple concerns of both victims, but also people that are afraid to be victims. They are afraid of being victimized by this type of violence. So those services have included escort services, as Annie has described, but equally important educational services to inform our communities about the possibilities of violence, but also to work together with other communities in the Western Addition, for example. And I thank the mayor for joining us the other day with a gathering of the black community and the Asian American community in the Western Addition to talk about ways to combat not only racial violence, but racial injustice. And thank you, Mayor, for that support. Our community has suffered years of racial violence from the day that we first immigrated to America. But we will not be silent as we still undergo this racial violence, and we have to advocate for change. And I'm talking about our API community. But this is not an API community problem. This is America's problem. And so we ask the city to continue to help us combat and prevent this type of violence. And we thank the mayor for her continuing efforts and the San Francisco Police Department. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Dean, for being here. With that, we're opening it up for any questions related to the subject matter that you might have. Okay.
Maybe for Chief Scott, he mentioned a lot of stats of, you know, the one guy arrested 31 incidents and the other. And I know this is kind of a broken record, but you made arrests. How long were they in jail? Have they been prosecuted? What's the status?
I don't know about all of them. They were all charged, the ones that I mentioned, and I don't know if they're in jail today, but the thing is, whether they're in jail or not, here's what I want the message to be loud and clear. the San Francisco Police Department will do its part. And we will hold people accountable. We will make the arrests. We will investigate these cases to the best of our ability and continue to do the job. And the court system it does what it does, and we respect the court system, but we will do our part. That's not up to us. What we do is we bring the cases to the prosecutors, and that system takes on what it's supposed to do. And that system not only involves prosecutors, but it also involves the courts and the judges and all that. So it's a criminal justice system. All I can speak to is what we do. I want to keep this department focused on our job. And if we do that well, then the rest of the parts of this system have a better chance of better outcomes, or the outcomes that we want to see in terms of people being held accountable.
Chief, did you see processes over the last few years, 2020 and 2021? You see the process of the arrest and prosecution. So have they also made some steps as well?
Again, we're going to focus on what we do. I mean, some of the outcomes are what we would hope, some of them are not. And we, the police department, needs to focus our energy on doing the best job that we can. And we don't always get it perfect either. But that's why we need to focus on us. And that's what we're going to continue to do.
A couple of things, if I may. Just about this year, are you planning on having increased police presence in Chinatown around the New Year celebrations? What are you doing for this coming year's?
Yeah, definitely. So our captain at Central District, Captain Julian Ng, he's done a really good job with footbeat deployment. It's much more robust than it was only a couple years ago. And as the mayor mentioned, we're having some challenges with COVID and this latest surge of COVID. A lot of our officers have been off sick, but we're going to continue to make it happen. We make the adjustments. You will see officers deployed and more officers deployed in Chinatown, as well as other areas of the city. And we have to make adjustments constantly to make that happen, and we'll continue to do that. We've gotten support from the mayor on overtime, and it's keeping us afloat, to be quite honest with you. And I thank the mayor and others who have made that happen. But we need to do whatever we need to do to keep our city safe, and that's the bottom line. And I want to say that again. We need to do whatever we need to do to keep our city safe, because these things just don't happen. They don't happen without the support of the mayor. They don't happen without the overtime. They don't happen without the staffing. You got to have the people to do the job. So we've thankfully been in a position where at least we have the overtime funding to shore up some of our losses, some of our retirements, some of the dealing with this COVID, this latest surge that has had a lot of officers off work. Yes, so the question was the victim services, and Sarah talked a lot about what her organization does to support victims from the public entities. In 2020, you all may remember that we had an initiative driven by the mayor where we stood up a community liaison unit, and those officers, that is their sole role, to support the victims before prosecution. There's a process that the DA's office and the state supports victims of crime, and those processes are still there. But oftentimes, before that case goes to the DA for prosecution, those victims need support. And that's where community groups, community entities like CYC and others, and the police department comes in. So that unit has been really, really important to support victims, and we've supported hundreds of victims, getting them to the resources that they need, the guidance that they need to access those resources, and that was a value added to support people. So that is an ongoing thing that the police department does, and as Sarah said, they helped a number of victims last year, and we'll continue to do that. So we're always working to get better. And, as we face these challenges, we have some very smart and bright people that come up with ideas to do things better, and that's what we'll continue to do. Okay. Well, we will be out there as far as the policing of the Lunar New Year festivities, and we have made adjustments. You know, the masking with CDC and our public health guidance is helpful. The mandatory vaccinations, you know, people are getting hospitalized like they were, and this city is very fortunate to have leadership that had the vision to do what it's done. That's helped. You know, people have been off sick, but they're coming back to work a lot sooner, and that's helpful too. But the bottom line is we have to have the officers out in the street. We have to have the officers out there engaged and a part of the community policing that we want for the city, and we'll continue to do that. So, thank you.
I'm sorry, do I see what?
Same connection with the rise of hate crime.
I don't think that's a fair assessment to link the two. You know, two different subject matters, and sadly, this rise in hate crimes seems to be a trend throughout this country, starting with our previous president, who I think in some ways created a divide once the pandemic hit. And here in San Francisco, as I said, we're going to do everything we can to make it clear that it won't be tolerated here. Thank you.
Talk about the lawsuit releasing district attorney cases being federal lawsuit.
I'm done with the.
Basically, federal lawsuit.
Are we finished with the question?